Welcome, everyone. This is Colleen McCarthy O'Toole from the QSMA's Family Support Department. We're so glad to have you join us this evening for the QSMA's first Wellness Webinar Series presentation. We have launched this new program as a special resource to provide valuable tools to best care for ourselves and others and promote our overall wellness. We'd like to give a big thank you to our presenting sponsor, Genentech, for generously supporting this series. We appreciate all of the questions that we've received in advance of this webinar, and we'll try to answer many of these during today's presentation and Q&A. You will also be able to submit any questions throughout the webinar using the questions box, which you'll find located on the GoToWebinar toolbar. Please note that all lines remain muted during the whole webinar, other than the speakers. If you have any additional questions after today's presentation, please contact the QSMA Family Support Team at familysupport@qsma.org. We would now like to welcome our speaker, Tara Davenport, who will be sharing her presentation, Simple Mindfulness for Decreasing Stress. Tara?
Thank you, Colleen. Thank you both to you, Colleen, and to your entire QSMA staff for facilitating this wellness series for our SMA community. I am so excited, and I'm really honored to get to kick off this new year. And how happy are we all that it's 2021 with this series. It's especially meaningful for me to get to share a little of my mindfulness practice with this community, because this community has given so much to me and my family. I'm always excited to share my meditation, but sharing it with any other group doesn't really have the same feeling as it does sharing it here with you guys today, with my people. So as Colleen said, my name is Tara Davenport, and I'm coming to you live today from Albuquerque, New Mexico. I am a former civil engineer turned mother to 4 children now. 2 of my children have been diagnosed with autism, and 1 has been diagnosed with SMA. And I share that in part because I want everyone tuning in today to know that I really get it. I get it intimately and firsthand that life is really hard. I mean, life can be really, really good, but at the same time, it isn't easy. And I know that. I'm here in the trenches with everybody. Shortly after my daughter Claire was born and diagnosed with SMA, I quickly realized that I was going to have to find a better way to cope with my stress. My memory of that time is of such heaviness and darkness and overwhelm. And thankfully, it was during that time that I stumbled upon the practice of mindfulness meditation. And I have really tried since then, and that's we're coming up on 10 years now, to be a regular meditator ever since. It has just helped me so much in reducing my stress, reducing my overwhelm. And that's why I'm really thrilled to get to share a bit of it with you all today. I'm not a guru. I am far from perfect in maintaining a formal, rigid mindfulness meditation practice. I do my best, but you know, I'm a busy mom also. But this mindfulness moment idea that I'm going to share with you today, this informal practice, is something that I really do regularly in my own life. And I find that I am just much calmer and really better able to cope with everything that life throws my way when I'm regularly incorporating it into my day. So during our time together today, we're going to talk first a little bit about why we might need some more mindfulness in our life. Second, we're going to discuss a couple of ways that our minds can, without us even knowing it, sabotage our joy. And then we're going to learn a simple mindfulness practice that you can use anytime, anywhere, to help you just really stabilize and settle your mind. Does that sound good? Okay, let's get started. So to start us off today, I want to share a quote with you to have you think about just for a moment. I'm going to share it first as I read it, and then I'm going to repeat it to try to apply a little bit more globally to all of us. So the quote as I read it was, "As a special needs parent, I do not have the ability to make life fair for my children, but I do have the ability to make life more joyful. So let me repeat that. I do not have the ability to make life fair, but I do have the ability to make life more joyful. Now, I know that all of us here today represent just a really wide range of abilities and walks of life and perspectives, but I would guess all of us, and really for all humans, I think there's a bit of truth as well as some power in that quote. We can fight, we can advocate, we can try with everything we have to make life more fair. But ultimately, whether or not life is really fair is not completely in our control. And we all know this. We all say this all the time. Life isn't fair. Life isn't fair. But the second part of that sentence is where I think that the power comes in. Each of us has the full ability to make life more joyful, not just for ourselves, but for those around us. So the question is, if we want to make our life more joyful, the first question we have to answer is, what is depleting my joy? What robs me of joy on a day-to-day basis in my life? So I encourage you, if you think back over, let's say, the last 24 hours, what are some things that have depleted your joy? What have gotten in the way of you having just more joy and happiness and peace in your life? If you have some ideas and you want to share them, you can type them into the questions box, and the Curious Amaze staff is going to share them with me. But I'm also just going to throw out a few and see if maybe any of them land with you. So maybe something that's stolen your joy is worry. Maybe it's worry over your health. Maybe it's worry about your job. We know, especially during this time of a pandemic, there's just so much uncertainty and worry about our future. Maybe it's being so overwhelmed. Maybe it's a caregiver or at your work or whatever it is, just that sense of overwhelm, it can rob us of our joy. Maybe it's that eggshell that went in with the egg while you were making pancakes this morning. You had to fish that out. Those little things, they rob us of joy also. Maybe you burned the pancakes. Or somebody said maybe the Uber didn't show up on time. Maybe the dog peed all over the floor again. We have a new puppy in our house. The puppy brings joy and the puppy depletes joy. There's a lot of pee on the floor. So all of these things, big and small, they steal our joy. And the reason that they do is because they're all a form of stress. And in this sense, stress is the tension that we experience between what is happening in our lives and what we want to be happening in our lives. It's that tension of wanting things in our life to be other than they are. I so want to go have coffee with my friend, but we're in a pandemic. There's that tension. I want my kids to not fight, but yet I can hear them arguing in the other room. Oh, I wish things were other than they are. I want to feel good and exercise, and oh, this hip, it just won't stop hurting. Oh, I love my job so much, but gosh, I hate my boss. Think about this tension of wanting things in life to be other than they are. Can you think of some specific examples? My guess is that once you start thinking about it, you'll realize how much of your day you may spend wanting things to be other than they are. So now listen to me. You know this, I know this, but I think we all need to be reminded of it occasionally. It is hard to make life more joyful when we live in this constant state of stress or tension. It's hard to find peace. It's hard to reduce our stress. When we live in this chronic state of wanting things to be other than they are, it's harder to find or to bring much joy to our life or to the lives of those around us. right? Okay, so before we jump into this mindfulness practice that I find for me can help sometimes break this cycle of tension of wanting things to be other than they are, I think it's important to understand a little bit about the way our minds work that can rob us of our joy. And they're ways that we're often not even aware of. I was unaware of them until I got into meditation. So I'm going to share today 2 ways that our minds can work against us in our quest for more joy and peace in our lives. So let me see if you can relate to this. Have you ever noticed when you're sitting in your car at a red light and your mind is thinking about stuff, you're not typically thinking about the good stuff? Like you're not sitting there thinking, gosh, wasn't that great how my plumbing totally worked this morning? Or, oh, I love how my car or my wheelchair just started up on the first try today. No, during these moments when our mind is only maybe semi or half engaged in a task, like when you're sitting at a red light, if you pay attention to your mind, you will notice that it has a very strong tendency to focus on what didn't go well over the course of the day rather than on what did. And there is a very specific reason for this, and it's due to the hardwiring of our brains. Our brains are beautifully designed for our survival and for the survival of our offspring, but they're not beautifully designed for our happiness. Your brain's #1 job is helping you and your offspring survive. So in those moments when we're sitting there waiting for the red light to turn green, or I know for me a bad one is when I'm priming the feeding tube pump, when you're stirring the pasta, these times when our minds aren't super engaged in a task or an activity, the mind slips into what's known as defaulting. So defaulting, it's a natural tendency of our mind to flip through the Rolodex. I always wonder if people remember what Rolodexes are, but back where you could flip through and find your contacts. Our minds flip through the Rolodex of either past experiences or potential future ones. And as it's scanning through, flipping through this Rolodex, it wants to rehash either what has happened or it's rehearsing for the future. And the whole time that it's doing that, it's looking for, where's the problem? Where's the problem? Where's the problem? And why are our minds so obsessed with finding the problem? It is because the good stuff in our life doesn't ensure our survival. We are more likely to survive if we focus on the bad stuff and solve the problems. So if our mind can help us focus on negative stuff and problems and be working in the background to help us solve those problems, to help us survive, that's what it does. And you know, sometimes this is a good thing. I've solved a lot of problems when my mind is in the default mode. It's how we discover and how we solve problems a lot of the time. The question we have to ask ourselves is, when we notice that our mind is doing this, is whether or not it's bringing you any benefit. Because if we let it continue to do its thing without any awareness that it's happening, it will slowly erode the quality of our life as it encourages us, or really almost forces us, to focus on everything that's not right in our lives. And it is hard to bring more joy when the focus is on the negative. And I have found for myself, having children who don't function in the world in a typical way, I stay on even more high alert than I used to. I really feel just constantly scanning for and trying to solve the potential problems. So that's the first way our minds work against us, and squeezing, as we're trying to squeeze in a little extra joy, is through this idea of defaulting. The second way that our minds work against us in our quest to have more joy is by the layering of our thoughts. So I wonder if anything like this has happened to any of you. I'm in my kitchen and I think, oh, I need to run up to my room and grab a book. So I walk out of my kitchen. As I'm walking down the hall, I think, oh, my friend Kristen gave me that book. Gosh, I can't believe it's been a year since I've seen her. Oh, that last trip when I got to see her was so amazing. I cannot believe it's been almost a year. Oh, she's so fun and easy to hang out with, and I love her kids. And I get up to my room and I'm like, I have no clue why I'm here. I cannot remember. I just have to stand there and look around for a little bit. Does this sound familiar? This is the layering of our thoughts. And sometimes I actually think it's sort of fun to go back and like try and pull that apart and figure out how did I get to this thought when I started here? And it's, it's sort of impressive sometimes. And sometimes it doesn't cause us any issues. But there are times when it does. And let me give you an example of that. So the other night I was unloading the dishwasher and I heard my husband say to my 9-year-old, my daughter with SMA, "Hey, Claire, do you want some ice cream?" So I'm unloading the dishwasher and I started thinking, Claire loves her ice cream. Gosh, I remember when she was in the hospital for her spine surgery, man, she ate ice cream every day. That was most of her calories. Gosh, we all ate so much ice cream. Oh my gosh, I can't believe it's almost time for another surgery. What if the vaccine's not out in time? Gosh, I should probably call her doctor tomorrow. And just like that, in such a brief amount of time, I went from unloading the dishwasher thinking about ice cream to a full-on stress response in my body, my heart pounding, my head spinning, just like that, layering of thoughts. Boom, depletes my joy. Our minds are powerful, you guys. They are such powerful things, but we can harness that power and we can use it for our benefit. And I'm going to show you how. Okay, so now we're going to shift gears a little bit. So far, we've discussed how we can't make life fair, but we can make it more joyful. We've talked that one thing that robs us of that joy is that chronic tension of wanting things to be other than they are. And we've talked about how our minds contribute to that tension and that stress through both defaulting to the negative and layering of thoughts. So now I'm going to share just a really simple mindfulness practice to help you break some of these mental habits, to reduce your stress, and hopefully to add more joy into your life. So first, I want to make sure we all understand what mindfulness is. I'm sure we have some people with us today who maybe you've seen mindfulness listed on the top 5 ways to reduce your stress, but you're not real clear on what it actually is. And then there's other people with us who might have a really strong daily meditation practice. But to get us on the same page here, I want to really just take a minute to make sure we all understand what mindfulness is. So let's think about our attention, or what our mind focuses on, as a spotlight. So wherever we shine and focus our spotlight or our attention is where we're fully engaged in that moment. So I can shine my spotlight or I can shine my attention out the window at what's going on outside. I could move my attention or my spotlight to the plant on my desk. I could just put my awareness there. I could move my spotlight and my attention to the picture of my kids on my desk. I can even take my spotlight of my awareness and I can shine it internally on what I'm thinking about or what I'm feeling in my body. And in mindfulness, what we do is we choose where to put that spotlight of our attention. It's making the intentional effort to put our attention where we want it to be, when we want it to be there. So I like to define mindfulness with 2 simple words: intentional awareness. Intentional awareness. Intentionally choosing where to put our full attention. So in this mindfulness practice we're going to learn today, I'm going to share 3 steps to help us really hone in and practice this intentional awareness. You don't need to memorize these steps or write it down anywhere. We're going to go through each of them in some detail, and then we're going to try them out together. So the 3 steps in this mindfulness practice we're going to learn today are to stop, to drop, and to soften. Stop, drop, and soften. So let's look at each of these 3 in a little bit more depth. So our first step in our little mini mindfulness session is to first stop. In our lives, it is so easy to get caught up in the busyness. And whether that's physical busyness of running around, trying to get everything done, whatever we have going on in our lives, or whether it's the mental busyness of our thoughts and planning and rehashing and rehearsing, or for me, I know it's a combination of the both. To do this practice, we have to make the choice or the intention to pause our busy mind and our busy body. It's about stopping whatever you've been doing in the particular moment. It's that intentional part that we talked about just a minute ago. Intentionally choosing to put on the brakes for just a minute. Maybe it's easier to think about it as pressing the pause button. For me, I like to think about it as interrupting the way that I usually will respond. So that first step is just to stop, to make that choice. The second step in our stop, drop, and soften is thankfully not dropping to the floor as we did in 3rd grade with stop, drop, and roll. This is not a physical drop, it's a mental drop. This is a mental drop into our body. And what I mean by that is if you remember that spotlight of our attention, when we drop, we take that spotlight from what's going on all around us, and instead we move our attention to what's happening inside of our body. It's letting go of the chaos around us, or even that storyline or that chatter in our head, to just become aware of what's happening, what sensations can we feel in our body. You know, this is one of those things that it's a little bit easier to experience than it is to try and listen to somebody talk about. So we're going to take just a minute here, and I'm going to walk you through the experience of dropping into your body. Let's give it a try. So if you're comfortable, close your eyes, and if you're not, you can just gaze softly at the floor or whatever works for you. And as we sit here and we drop into our body, one easy place to do this is when you feel the sensation of the weight of your body in your seat or in your bed or wherever you are. So you're not thinking about your body, you're not thinking about your seat. You're feeling those points of contact between your body and the seat and just that weight. Or if that idea doesn't really resonate with you and you're not feeling anything with that, I want you to move that spotlight of your attention, of your awareness, to your feet. And I want you to just feel the sensations in your feet. You're not thinking, oh gosh, I need to go to get a pedicure. You're not looking down at your feet. Can you feel your feet as they rest on the floor or maybe on your footrest? Can you feel the tightness of your shoes around your feet? Or maybe the fuzziness of your socks? Maybe your toes are a little bit sweaty or tingling tonight. Just focusing on those sensations in your feet, putting your full attention on the sensations of your feet. Dropping in to your body by feeling these sensations. And one last way that we'll try tonight together is focusing on the sensation of your breath. In mindfulness, the breath is a very common place when we drop into our bodies, because our breath is always there and always with us in the middle of the night, wherever we are. So I want you to right now try to find where in your body can you most vividly feel your breath. For some of us, it might be right at our nose or at the back of our throat. Maybe it's the expansion and the contraction in our chest or in our belly. But just take a minute here to drop into your body and feel those sensations. Okay, if you closed your eyes, you can open them. So that's the drop. That's dropping into our body to be present with whatever is happening in our body at that moment. It's just feeling the sensations without judgment, without putting a storyline to them, just feeling those sensations. That's the drop. So first we stop, then we drop, and lastly we soften. So every time we take a breath, on the exhale, we have to soften. It's the only way that our bodies can breathe out. It's like literally the mechanism for exhaling is to soften and to release. And if we pay attention, we can feel into our body as we exhale and as we soften. And maybe for some of us, the softening on the exhale doesn't really work for you, and that's really not a problem. We all have different bodies and different sensations. I want you to think for a minute, where in your body could you bring some tension intentionally and then feel the softening? So maybe it's in your jaw. Many of us regularly carry tension in our jaw. Can you tighten that and then relax? Maybe it's just between two fingers or a fist. So again, we're not thinking about our fingers, we're not thinking about our fist. We're feeling the sensation of tightening. For me, I can feel my fingernails as they press into my palm. I can feel some tightness around my knuckles. Feeling that tightening and then relax. Or maybe it's tightening our shoulders and then relaxing. But somewhere in your body, can you find the sensation of release, of softening? Just as best we can. And again, there's no judgment. If we're in pure awareness, if we're purely focusing on the sensations of our body, then there's no thought, and so there's no judgment. It's just about the sensations. So one more interesting thing to think about with this concept of softening is, could you maybe practice a mental softening? So if you remember back to my layering example, 1 minute I was thinking about ice cream and unloading the dishwasher, and the next my heart was racing and my mind was racing. Before I knew about mindfulness, I would have been stuck in that state of anxiety. And my evening would have been far less enjoyable because my mind would be spinning and worrying about the upcoming surgery and what I needed to get done, which was nothing that night. But instead, I chose in that moment to practice stop, drop, and soften. And in this case, part of that softening was to soften the clinging to the thoughts of either the past surgeries or upcoming surgeries. Our minds cling to those things. And I let those feelings come up because feelings are natural and that's okay. And we all have feelings and we can't stop our feelings, but we can stop the thoughts that continue to perpetuate those feelings. And so in that moment, I stopped, I dropped, I softened that mental clinging until my heart returned to normal, my mind settled a little bit. It's not easy. It's really not. And I say that with, all honesty. It really takes work, it takes practice, and it takes that intention. And it takes a desire to want to respond differently. Without awareness that my mind had basically taken me hostage, I would not have been able to choose this different response. I would have just gone with it and my mind would have had me hostage for the rest of the evening. So now with that information, let me share with you the secret weapon part of this practice. When you're just beginning to bring a bit of mindfulness into your day through a practice like stop, drop, and soften, you cannot start with doing it during your most stressful moments. You cannot start doing this in the middle of Target with everyone wearing masks during your toddler's massive tantrum. You cannot climb to the top of the Himalayas until you get into shape doing some practice climbs first. So I want you right now to think to yourself, and you could write this down or share it with somebody. When during the course of your typical day could you practice this stop, drop, and soften? When is a fairly non-stressful time, maybe one of those semi-engaged times when your mind might slip into default or layering, when you could practice stop, drop, and soften? Let me share what I do. So in the morning, brush my teeth every morning. I get my toothbrush, I put the toothpaste on, and I stop. I drop into my body. I feel my hand holding my toothbrush. I feel my feet on the floor. Maybe I feel my hand on the counter, on the coolness of the tile, and I soften. And then I brush my teeth, just for a couple of breaths. It's practicing during those easy times so that we get the handle of this and get the hang of it. Another time I really like to practice is when I'm priming Claire's feeding tube. So those of you who are in the feeding tube world know that you have to stand there and press that button. I don't know how long it is, 15 seconds, 20 seconds, I'm not even sure. And when I'm standing there pushing that button, waiting for the tube to prime, my mind, there's nothing else I can be doing. It loves to start going different places and defaulting and layering and whatever else it wants to do. And so during that time that I do every single day, I press that button, I stop, I drop into my body, and I can't tell you how often I find that I'm like pushing that button with enough force that I'm surprised I haven't knocked it over, or my shoulders are uptight as I'm thinking about whatever in my day, and I soften. And I feel my breath, or I feel where my finger is pushing on that button, and I just notice those sensations. I just drop into those sensations. I try to relax whatever mental clinging I came into the room with and just soften. So maybe it's before you eat a meal. Maybe it's right when you first get into your car or the first time you get into your wheelchair for the day. Maybe could you do this right as you get into bed at night? I challenge you to right now think of 3 times during your regular normal day when you could do this, combined with something that you already do, and then give it a try. And then after you've practiced in some easy situations, take it on the road. Could you do it at a red light? How about in the waiting room before a doctor's appointment? How about when your child is having a tantrum, in Target or not? How about during a meeting? Maybe during one of those dreaded IEP meetings. Could you stop, drop into your body, and soften? So with this practice, you can take this brief moment of mindfulness into harder and harder situations with practice first. When you're doing this out in your day, you do not have to close your eyes. Nobody's even going to know you're doing it unless you choose to share. And every single time that you do this practice, do you know what you're doing? Remember that tension? You're making a little space to soften that tightening of wanting things to be other than they are. And that space is now where there's room for some joy to sneak in. I know for me, it allows me to engage with my kids with a bit more joy rather than as a frustrated, tired, stressed out, yelling mom. Not every time, but some of the time. Just bringing in a little bit more joy. And speaking of that, I want to make sure that you all know that I'm not trying to be Pollyannish about this. We are not trying to be joyful all the time. I don't claim that this practice, if you do it 3 times a day after you brush your teeth, is going to eliminate your stress. Life is still hard. But this practice allows us to reduce a little bit of that tension about wanting life to be other than it is. It's just about softening that stress and that tension, even if just for a moment, because all of those moments add up. So the final thing we're going to do together tonight before we take some questions is to practice a slightly longer version of this stop, drop, and soften. So we can do these informal, brief mindfulness moments like we've talked about anytime during the day. We can also do a more formal mindfulness meditation practice where the difference is we stick with it for a little bit longer. We sit with those sensations of our body a little bit longer. And as with most things, I find that doing it for a bit longer, in my experience, brings more benefits. A more stable mind, more space for joy to come in, and for me, most importantly, less clinging to wanting things to be other than they are. Because in the moment of practicing this, we are just being present for and accepting whatever is, whatever sensations we feel. It's just giving us a little break from wanting things to be other than they are. We ready to try it? All right. So let's start by, again, if you're comfortable, closing your eyes. If you've been listening to this webinar while you're making dinner, doing the dishes, or whatever you might have been doing driving home from work, maybe pull over, stop for just a minute to practice that stop. And then we're going to practice, again, just for a few moments here, dropping into the sensations of our body. Again, we're not making judgments about what we feel. We're just feeling what we feel. Maybe it's your hand on your thigh. Again, the weight of our body in our seat is often one that we can find. Or I encourage you, if you can, to again, try to find that sensation of breath. Wherever in your body you can find it the most vividly tonight. And just sit with and feel those sensations. Maybe you notice the air coming in is cool. When we exhale, it's warmer. Maybe it's that expansion and contraction in our chest or in our belly. Just as best you can, put that full spotlight of your awareness on these sensations that you feel in your body right now. And if your mind wanders off in thought, which it will, because you know what? This is what our minds do. This is what we've trained them to do. So when it does that, it's not a problem. Just gently drop back into awareness in your body. And then it'll go into thought again. And we practice, beginning again, feeling those sensations. Riding the wave of our breath. Working to accept what is in this moment rather than wishing things were other than they are. Bringing our mind back again to dropping into our bodies. To feel some softening, whether it's on the exhale, maybe you can soften your eyes. Maybe it's just softening your shoulders. There's no right way. There's no wrong way to do this practice. We do it with compassion and love for ourselves. And as our meditation ends, if your eyes are closed, whenever you're ready, you can open them. And that's an example of a mindfulness meditation practice. So it's longer than the informal stop, drop, and soften mindfulness moment. Those you can do anywhere at any time during your day. But the meditation is just a bit more formal. It lasts a little longer, and it keeps you present for longer. And it gives you a chance to watch your mind wander, do what it wants to do, and just continually choose to bring it back to that drop into your body. I really encourage you to try the informal practice and the longer meditations. There's an app that you can get at the Apple Store, I think anywhere you can get apps, that's called the Insight Timer. So that's Insight, INSIGHT, Insight Timer. And they have pre-recorded meditations. You can do it for free. Thank you, Sarah. And you can choose really short little meditations, or you can choose really long ones on lots of different topics that might be relevant to you. You can also try just sitting in silence, but I think as you begin, guided meditations are a really nice entry point into meditation. So as I wrap up the time that I have to share with you guys, I want to circle back to my original quote. We cannot make life more fair, but we can make life more joyful. And I hope you saw today how a mindfulness practice can have the ability to just allow for some of that busyness, just to soften that and to loosen some of that tension and that stress, and allow just a little more space for the joy to make its way in, both for you and for those around you. I so hope that this brought you some benefit today. And with that, I'm happy to take some questions.
Thank you so much, Tara. That was fantastic. And as a person who, a lot of us try to avoid meditation. We think we can't do it. It just proves, even with just 5 minutes, you can get a great meditation in, and it's so worthwhile. So we really, really appreciate everything you went over with us today. So we did have questions come through. Our first question is, how do I stop my thoughts from spinning?
The spinning thoughts. I have so much experience with spinning thoughts. I feel like sometimes my mind can be held hostage by that spin. I bet that a lot of you can relate to that feeling. And again, this practice of just stopping and dropping into our bodies and softening, it can definitely help, but I know that for me, sometimes when it's really bad, a change of scene combined with a little short or longer meditation practice can really make a difference. I will often just step outside on my front porch, maybe take a quick spin around the block. It's just that little bit of something different combined with, at the same time, trying to practice this stop, this drop, and this soften. I find at least can bring some awareness to it, and can sometimes, with repeated practice, help calm down that spinning a little bit. It's a good question, and it's hard. Thank you.
Absolutely, thank you. Our next question is, any advice for dealing with frustrations?
with frustration. So in my mind, for me, frustration is really just goes back to that feeling of wanting things to be other than they are, of getting stuck or really mired or hunkered down in that mindset. And I know what's been helpful for me, a lot of meditation is about an awareness of my mind. And it's about the awareness that I don't have to stay in that mindset. And that's been really helpful for me. I always try and remember, it's what we practice in meditation, that each breath is a new moment, and each moment in our life is a new moment. And at any of those moments, we could choose to shift that direction of where our awareness is. And so when I find that I'm getting stuck with that frustration and that tension of wanting things to be other than they are, sometimes just doing the practice and choosing a different perspective can help. And sometimes frustration just is what it is. Life is hard, life is frustrating, but I think that with practice, we know that each breath and each moment is new, and it's just, our practice can remind us of that and help with that a little bit. I hope that helps.
That was wonderful. Each breath is a new moment. We'll all have to remember that. And I'll definitely have to remember that. That's very applicable for during the meditation as well. I know sometimes I get frustrated because it's hard to stay in that state. So that's definitely valuable information. I even wrote it down. Thank you for that. So our next question we have is, to practice a more formal meditation, do I have to do it in a specific place or in a specific way?
So that's a good question. I'm sure that we've all seen pictures of people meditating, and it's often depicted on a beach with the waves or in a dark, quiet corner, maybe with a candle burning. People always look so blissed out and peaceful. And all of those people probably are meditating. But I always like to say, do you know who else is meditating? That person sitting across from you on the bus or on the subway who's just sitting there. Maybe a mom pushing a stroller down the street. Even the person in front of you in the line at the grocery store. It is a practice we can take with us anywhere, whether it's the informal short ones or the full meditation. Anytime that we choose to sit in awareness of the sensations of our body, we're meditating. We're letting go of that clinging, that mental clinging, and we're just coming into whatever it is that we're doing. So I know I try to do some formal meditation in a quieter place. Honestly, one of my best places to do it is while I'm waiting for my kids to fall asleep and the room is dark and they won't let me leave until they're asleep. It's just quiet and peaceful, and that's a time that, I could choose to be scrolling Facebook, and I often try to instead choose to just focus on the sensations of my breath, of my body in my chair. But no, to answer the question, you don't have to do it in any specific place or any specific way. You have to find what brings benefit to you with this practice.
Thank you for that. Our next question, is it safe to take alternative treatments like melatonin or other herbal supplements that help with stress and anxiety? Specifically, is CBD safe to take for stress and anxiety?
I assume that when somebody sent in that question, they might not have known my background. I'm a mom, I do meditation. I'm happy to be able to enjoy it with you today, but those are questions that I would encourage you to go to your primary care physician or a trusted practitioner and talk about. That's a little bit of a different realm than meditation.
Thank you so much for clarifying that. Let's see. How do I make effective breathing exercises as the first step to relaxation with minimal lung capacity?
Meditation is not necessarily about the deep breathing. It's not about having to to feel that. And I hope today that I shared some ideas with, feeling tension and finding that release, that it's really just about finding those sensations in your body and putting your awareness there, which then allows that mental busyness and everything else that happens in our minds to just sort of stop and relax a little bit. So any sensation of breath, if it's a shallow breath or a deep breath, in fact, that's something that I often say when I'm leading meditations is, we don't have judgment of our breath. We're just feeling our breath in this moment. And if we're under a lot of tension, that breath might be real shallow, for any of us. It's just about coming into awareness of those sensations. So I hope that, maybe some of these other places in your body, if your breath isn't working for you, it's just about dropping in, doing that drop.
Wonderful, thank you for that. And we have a final question that actually just came in. How can meditation practice help people suffering and traumatized by the pandemic?
Oh, that's such a good question. And it's close to my heart because I feel like we're all suffering and traumatized by this. And I know that. I know for our family, we are so locked down and it's hard. These are hard times. And I will say that I was very lucky that I signed up for a mindfulness masterclass that lasted for 9 months, and it started in March. No, it started in February. So it was during the course of the pandemic. And so I was able to use this time that I've been at home to really work on my meditation. And, again, it's just about your mind starts spinning about the what ifs and the what could have been and, all of these things about anything, but particularly about the pandemic. And it's about noticing when it's doing that. And then again, the intention of coming back and dropping into your body and just sitting with those feelings. And we always say those feelings are natural. Feelings process, feelings will leave. But if we keep feeding them with our mental chatter and our mental talking, that's when we suffer. That's where the more suffering comes from, when you can be present with the feelings, let them pass, and you just do it again and again and again. Yeah, it can bring some benefit, but it is hard. These are hard times. And I said during the presentation, it's not a magic bullet. It's just one more tool, hopefully in your toolbox of ways of coping might be of some benefit to you.
Great. Well, thank you so much, Tara, for taking the time to answer all of these great questions that came in. This was really such a great, informative presentation and really a wonderful way to, kind of begin the new year and focus and be aware of our own mindfulness. So thank you again, Tara, for kicking off this wellness webinar series for us and for presenting today. We're so happy to have you here. We are grateful to all of you who joined today. You will be receiving a follow-up email with a survey link, and we appreciate any feedback that you have to share. Also, there were 5 participants this evening who were randomly selected for a Mindfulness Prize, and you'll be contacted within the next 24 hours about the prize. So congratulations, and thank you so much for attending. And we are incredibly grateful for the support from our presenting sponsor, Genentech, for really making the webinar wellness series possible. So please check on our website for information on how to register as we continue this wellness webinar series. Our next wellness webinar will be February 1st, and the topic will be surrounding laughter yoga. And then our March 29th wellness webinar will be an art-based therapy for all. So if there's anything at all that we can do or any questions we can help answer, please always feel free to reach out to us at familysupport@curesma.org. Have a great rest of your evening, and thank you.